Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a very impromptu NewsFlash podcast. Still haven't worked on an intro yet for you guys, but I will. I will. It's in development. But right now, I have a very special guest on the show. He's been on the show before many times, and I'm sure all of you will know who he is. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show the one, the only, the amazing Ernst van Zyl.
Goedemiddag, Joe. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, Ernst. Thank you so much for willing to come onto the show very last moment to talk about the new documentary that AfriForum has released, fresh. It looks spectacular. I watched it myself last night. Yeah, I mean, okay, first let's start here. Why this documentary? Why did you guys feel it was necessary to make this documentary?
Right. So, firstly, I think what's very important is the context, and the context is the past 2 months of AfriForum just being the target of the entire the ANC's entire propaganda machine. Now, the ANC might be weakened, but they are definitely still in control of a very strong propaganda arm. And that propaganda arm, that machine, took full aim at AfriForum and the Solidarity Movement. And when you are the target of an information war, then you reply with solid, bulletproof, watertight facts. And that's what we did with this documentary. And I mean, the logic behind it as well, the format that we chose, is the fact that over the years, AfriForum and the wider Solidarity Movement have been producing world-class reports and conferences and talks and academic level research on, firstly, the threat to private property rights in South Africa, and also the many racially discriminatory laws and race laws in South Africa. But then we realized in 2025 there's a whole demographic out there of people that are interested in these topics, but they don't necessarily have the time to read a 50-page report, no matter how good quality it is, no matter how perfect the research is that went into that report. A lot of people just don't have the time, and that's understandable. So what we did with this documentary is we changed gears a little bit. So we took all that research that we'd been doing for all these years and we condensed it into a new vehicle, still communicating precisely the same facts, just in a different format. And it seems to have been a massive success.
Yes, it definitely has been a massive success. I actually wanted to check now. I was trying to look and see. I just haven't been able to find the link. It escapes me now. But there is a link, ladies and gentlemen, to the documentary in the description. So please, if you haven't watched the documentary, I highly encourage you guys to do it. And as Ernst said, a lot of a lot of mainstream media politicians saying, "Oh, AfriForum spreading disinformation, blah blah blah." But I'm
That
very
seems to be the
glad.
buzzword of the past 2 months as well. It's almost like a magic word. You don't even have to specify what the misinformation is. You just have to use that word, and then abracadabra, your opponents are magically silenced and their opinions discarded. Well, that's at least how people seem to believe that word works. And then they try that spell
Yeah,
on AfriForum, and we just keep spreading the truth and the facts. It doesn't work on us, and they lose their minds because this is supposed to work. This is how my media studies class told me this works. You just use the word misinformation, and that wins the argument. Well,
yeah,
clearly
exactly.
not, to their utter dismay.
Yeah, well, yeah, and what I was about to say is like this documentary feels like a rebuttal, a pushback, an answer to
Mm.
those saying, this is, oh, you guys are spreading misinformation. You guys basically came back and said,
Mm.
oh, really? Okay, well, here's all the receipts.
I
Because
mean,
also,
that's exactly the approach we took this time. Is we almost went out of our way to
yes,
include a source to every single claim made in the documentary. You'll see when those sources aren't directly being referenced by the speaker or by the person being interviewed, they are being referenced at the bottom of the screen with like, here you can read more about this, here you can find this, here you can find this. This is where this comes from. Every single claim in the documentary is backed up with, here's where AfriForum found this claim and verified this claim. So
Yes.
there's absolutely no way to then say, oh, these are just wild, baseless claims. I'm like, well, here's exactly where every one of these claims can be found. And it's not like our research is being sourced back to like claims on social media or like blog posts or anything. Like we're sourcing firstly the government's own documents, the
Yeah.
government's press statements and documents that they put out. We're also referencing directly what the ANC in particular have said themselves over the years. So we don't even have to really change the way in which we present that quote. We just put the quote on the screen and read it, and then people can decide for themselves. But the only way to really dispute that is to say, don't believe your lying eyes.
Well, I'm checking the video now, and on YouTube's interface it says 70K views. It's probably more than that.
YouTube lags a bit behind,
Yes,
as I understand it.
yes. So it's maybe a few thousand more than that, but 70K views in a day is phenomenal. And I think what's going to be interesting is the mainstream media reacting to this, because you know them, they can't shut up. So but it's going to be interesting to, like, because you've quoted a lot of these mainstream media outlets, like you just said. You put the this is from News 24 and this is the quote, blah blah. So it's going to be interesting to see if they actually say no, but this is misinformation.
Oh, you're the source.
We'll see how they react. It's going to be funny, and I'm definitely going to do a video on it. But Ernst, you know, this one thing I noticed about this documentary was actually very nice, is that it felt very relative, because a lot of what you guys spoke about in this documentary was stuff that was happening just even a few weeks ago. You know,
you mean relevant?
Relevant, sorry. So it feels very relevant because everything, or most of the stuff you guys were talking about, this is stuff that's happened maximum 2 months ago, 3 months ago. Maybe not maximum, but like definitely most of the stuff happened within the past 3 months. So, geez, how did you guys pull that off? How did you manage to get all that information so quickly, and edit it so quickly, so that it felt like, wow, this just happened?
Well, it's thanks to the treatment we get from the mainstream media and from politicians. When you are constantly under a microscope, when you're constantly slandered as spreading misinformation, when you're constantly attacked as liars and spreaders of disinformation and of propaganda or whatever, then you're forced to be absolutely perfectly bulletproof and watertight when it comes to your facts. And you have like a fact sheet that you have for every single topic, because you need to, because you're going to go into an interview as an AfriForum representative, and you're going to be absolutely grilled in a way that no other representative from a organization that is more friendly to the government is grilled in. Or government officials aren't grilled in this way. I was part of an interview a month or so ago during this whole episode of the past 2 months. And I was on this radio station, and they are grilling me like constantly, like, how can you say this? How can you spread all these lies? No examples being given, just like, how can you lie? Not saying which lies. And like this barrage of just grilling questions, absolute like intense hostility. And then the second half of the conversation, they're like, and now we're going to be talking to ANC representative Lindiwe Zulu. Hello, Mrs. Zulu. How are you? You're doing such fantastic progressive work there in the ANC. Please tell us a bit more. Can you dispel some of these lies and misinformation that are being flung at you from organizations like AfriForum? And I'm just sitting there. The contrast is like cartoonish. But at the same time, I appreciate the intensity, because that makes you better. That makes you better at debating, at arguing your case, at having the facts at hand. And to answer your question, then that long way to answer your question, that's why we had all the facts at hand, because we have to be so almost absurd levels of prepared for any topic that we enter in an interview or a panel discussion or a debate in, that when we wanted to create this documentary, I just went to our fact sheets. I'm like, well, here's everything already documented. Everything has a source, because that's the other thing. If you make a claim as AfriForum, you will be challenged, like, what's your source? Where do you find that? Who said that? How do you know that's true? So you have to have all the sources by your side as well. So I just had all the information already at hand. I just had to condense it into a documentary. And this documentary, I mean, you've seen some of the other documentaries that AfriForum have made in the past, Disrupted Land by Ernst van Zyl, Tainted Heroes, also my own Afrikaans documentary, Self Bestuur. Those were on a much larger scale than this one. They took months to create, had many more interviews, a lot higher budget, a lot more focus on all these different graphics and things on the screen. But this time around, we had firstly a very strong time crunch, about 2 weeks to produce this whole documentary, and it was only a 2-person team predominantly doing most of the work. It was me and Leandri de Klerk, who did a fantastic job from AfriForum TV. And to put this together, make sure that the edit it, to do the research, find the clips we want to include, do the interviews. And well, yeah, I also just want to thank AfriForum TV as an organization for their fantastic work once again. It's very nice to work with professionals, but also with perfectionists. It's a very, very good a nice privilege, because then you can trust the end product. And I mean, I'm very happy with how the documentary came out. As I said, it's done on a very small budget, very strong time crunch, and incredibly like a micro team almost. And I think what we achieved there, I'm very happy with it. And at the end of the day, the only thing that's really top priority for me is that there's no factual errors within it. There can be little editing errors, there can be some aesthetic things that don't work, or things that don't look as shiny or polished as they should. That's fine. That's expected with this small time horizon and small team. But what was absolutely important to me is that there cannot be any factual errors, because this piece of media, this documentary, is going to be put under a microscope, as everything else that AfriForum says. So it has to be bulletproof. It has to be faultless in its arguments and in its in the content that it presents as fact.
Absolutely. And look, you guys achieved that. I think it's great that you could put this documentary out, because it gives level-headed South Africans something to look at and say, like, okay, that's what the mainstream media is saying. Clearly, they have an agenda. And speaking of which, like, I did a little mini documentary, or a little deep dive, I called it, about the mainstream media attacking you guys when you guys went to Washington. Yes. And I've also linked that in the description below if people want to go check that out, just to show just how idiotic the mainstream media can be, and how they nitpick their certain guests to try and debunk and push their narrative.
They've got a sanitized, hand-picked expert for every argument that they try to make. I mean, it's
100%.
Every time it's someone that's coincidentally in perfect agreement with the government. That's a fascinating way how everything works out in that way. It's so strange. There's a fantastic piece of investigative journalism by Marie-Louise Antoine on Politics Web that exposed this entire charade. It's called the Information War Against AfriForum, and I would highly recommend people go read it. It is a pretty long piece, because she is a genuine investigative journalist. She really does a lot of fantastic research, and in that piece, she just has this. Well, there's many great quotes, but there's one quote I want to read that just sums it up perfectly. So she writes in that piece, under ANC rule, the South African sections of the media have a long and unfortunate history of targeting citizens who speak out against race-based policies or violent crime, with some commentators seeing their role in such situations more as regime attacks dogs rather than watchdogs against the abuse of power. And that just sums it up so perfectly for me.
100%. And I think I think with your documentary, the stuff that the little deep dive that I did, and this article that you speak of, it also goes to show that a lot of people, hopefully, don't fall for the
Mhm.
narrative that the mainstream media is trying to push out about you
Right.
guys. I
And
think,
sorry to interrupt you, Joe. Just to make it clear, there are many organizations and individuals doing fantastic work. I mean,
mm,
it's absolutely not just AfriForum. We're
no,
doing our
absolutely, yeah,
part in the bigger picture, but I just want to express my very big appreciation for all the brave individuals and organizations out there that have been pushing back against the government's propaganda the past 2 months. I've got respect for those people and those organizations because it's very difficult when the ANC's propaganda machine is mobilized in this way. High treason investigations into those who
yeah,
dare criticize the government, the president and his top brass in the ANC calling out organizations and individuals by name. That's a high temperature environment, and I have
yeah.
respect for anyone that in under those circumstances still sticks to their guns, even if they are slandered, attacked from the highest levels of power. And I think that's why I just wanted to give those people their flowers in this opportunity and thank everyone that stood with AfriForum in this fight for to get the truth about South Africa out there the last 2 months. Your names of your organizations and those individuals have been noted, and we will remember those who were brave enough when it counted most.
Fair. And yeah, thanks to all those organizations.
Mm.
I think they definitely help put the truth out there. I just want to mention very quickly that I am
Mm.
keeping an eye on the live chat, ladies and gentlemen. So if you have any questions for Ernst van Zyl specifically with regard to the documentary or anything else, just
Absolutely.
drop
Unlike
your question.
unlike President Ramaphosa and unlike President Biden, I'm actually open to comments from not just journalists, from the public. The only questions I won't answer are the questions I don't have the answer to, like knowledge I don't have.
Yeah. So please drop your question. I'll keep an eye
Mm.
out, and it will stand out more if you tag me. So, newsflash with Joe Emilio, and then ask the question. And in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, while you guys are dropping some questions or just having fun in the live chat, Ernst, there's one thing I wanted to ask you, right? Because right now you thanked a lot of organizations that were
Mm.
helping AfriForum and all that, and rightfully so. But there are some Afrikaners, apparently. I've spoken to one or two. I'm not saying all of them, but there seems to be a group of them
Mhm.
who actually aren't happy that you
Mhm.
guys went to the US. How do you
Mm.
guys? How does AfriForum feel about that? And
Mm.
also, two-part question. There's a rumor, or there was a rumor going around that you guys lost members because you went to the, the states.
Right.
Can you maybe just shed some light on that?
Mm. So it would have been very strange, quite bizarre, if all Afrikaners in South Africa were just united in their worldview and who they support and what their view is of the solidarity movement and AfriForum. That, especially from a people that are almost notorious for how much disagreement there is within the cultural group and within the cultural community. So that would have been almost like a scandal if someone were to claim that they have proof that all Afrikaners think the same in these regards. People would have been quite shocked. So, of course, there's people out there that don't like what AfriForum is doing, that criticize what AfriForum and the Solidarity Movement are doing. But there's always, I mean, that's our whole approach. The Solidarity Movement's approach is not to it's not to cater or represent those people, the 10% on the radical left or the 10% on the radical right. We represent the average Afrikaner out there, or we try our best to represent them as best as we can. We obviously can't represent all Afrikaners because we don't have a totality of all Afrikaners as members. But if you look at the membership numbers, a very undeniable picture starts taking form. So AfriForum has about 315,000 members. The Solidarity Movement, the wider Solidarity Movement that AfriForum is part of, which contains about 50 plus different organizations, has about 600,000 members. And the reality is, when it comes to families in South Africa, we don't have entire family full of AfriForum members. It's usually one of the father or the mother in the family in that is an AfriForum or a Solidarity member. So I think it's not a stretch to say that it's rather than hundreds of thousands of members, it's hundreds of thousands of families that are being represented by AfriForum and the Solidarity movement. And if you look at the numbers, I mean, the last census, the 2022 census, is not worth the paper it's printed on. Even the South African government is very wary to use it. The methodology there was just an absolute nightmare. But if you go on educated guesses based on the previous census numbers, there's about between 2.7 and 3 million Afrikaners in South Africa, and hundreds of thousands, 600,000 families out of 3 million is quite a significant amount. So while it would still be a stretch to say that AfriForum and the Solidarity movement speak for all Afrikaners, the organization and the wider movement definitely speaks for a statistically significant amount in the context of not a single other civil society organization that explicitly represents Afrikaners primarily as an alternative. There's not another Afrikaner organization in civil society, the sphere where AfriForum operates, that's even 5% of the membership base of AfriForum. So that's another factor that factors into this, is that even for people that say, well, there needs to be an alternative, that the reality is there just isn't. There just hasn't been. There hasn't been another organization that can organize Afrikaners in this way that the AfriForum and the Solidarity movement have been able to. So, of course, the other thing that also stands out to me that kind of answers your question in regards, well, not your question, that there was this question in the background of all this analysis and debates. Who does AfriForum and the Solidarity movement really represent? Well, first and foremost, we represent our members, but also I think a very large portion of Afrikaners. And the thing that really stands out to me to bolster that fact is when, as soon as Afrikaners were mentioned in this whole Trump, United States, South Africa episode for the past 2 months, as soon as Afrikaners were mentioned, every single person, black, white, young, old, Afrikaner, non-Afrikaner, South African, well, maybe not non-South African, but everyone in South Africa immediately thought, what does AfriForum and the Solidarity movement have to do with this? So I think that kind of makes the point that as soon as Afrikaners are mentioned at this level, immediately everyone's knee-jerk reaction is to immediately think, what is AfriForum and the Solidarity movement's role in this episode, or what's unfolding in front of us? And I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, I think it does too. And another
Oh, sorry, Joe. You had a second question. Did I answer your second question? I can't remember what it was.
The second question was, there was a rumor going around that because you guys went to Washington,
right.
There was numbers dropping of your membership.
No,
but I think
our membership increased in the past 2 months.
Yeah, like
actually quite significantly.
Yeah, with the numbers that you gave out there, I could tell. Yeah, they've gone up quite a bit, which is great. I mean, it's awesome. The support is great. I think a lot of people should support civil society groups, civil society organizations, AfriForum, Sakaliga, Free Market Foundation.
Yeah, there's many. As I said, there's many organizations out there that I think deserve people's support. If 100%. You don't necessarily have to just support AfriForum or Solidarity, you can also support the good work of organizations like the Free Market Foundation, Sakaliga, Ernst van Zyl's new Pioneer Initiative. There's many choices for people, as long as those organizations represent you properly, as long as they stand up for what is right under intense pressure. You know, they deserve your support.
100%. And just out of curiosity, I mean, I know that you AfriForum has said that the reasons why they went to Washington and the whole thing, but maybe you can give us some more context, behind the scenes.
Right.
What was the first thing that started? Where did that idea even pop up for you guys? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I understand.
Yeah, completely. At what point did you or Kelly Krell look at each other and be like, we gotta go to the US? What was that like?
Yeah. Well, I think firstly it's down to what I just mentioned, is the fact that Afrikaners are being put at the forefront of Trump's posts, of his executive order, of many of the statements and policies coming out of the United States. It's only natural then that the largest by far Afrikaner organizations in South Africa meet with the Trump administration for further communication. And I mean, this is the other thing. There's so much misinformation and lies and just propaganda out there. It was also important to us to ensure that through all this fog of war, all of this just whirlwind of information, false and true, we can actually carry the truth through the storm to the Trump administration. Maybe they already know everything we tell them. Maybe we can actually give them insights on something new that they didn't consider. That was the mission. And I think we achieved that very successfully by meeting with many high profile senior representatives of the Trump administration that thanked us for the high quality, detailed information that we were able to provide them on a myriad of topics, on farm murders, on race-based policies, on the Bella Act, the threat to Afrikaans education in South Africa, the Zondo report in regards to corrupt ANC politicians, and more. I actually helped quite a bit with doing the research for the documents that we handed over, and we also handed over the Washington memorandum that states exactly firstly, what the problems are in South Africa that we want addressed. And then secondly, to make our message from AfriForum and the Solidarity Movement very clear. Because again, as I said, there's so much misinformation and lies about what we actually want. So one of them, for example, is the fact that there's a lot of talk about the AGOA agreement with the United States being cancelled. Now, firstly, the facts on the table is that South Africa is breaching multiple criteria for the AGOA agreement, which gives many South African farmers and industries tariff-free trade with the United States. And when it comes to specifically the AGOA agreement, there's a lot of criteria, but one of it is protection of private property rights, not threatening private property rights, rule of law and law and order, and ensuring that there are systems in place that effectively fight corruption, that the government that signs this agreement is also promoting a free market system and is limiting the amount of state interference in the economy, and is not openly supporting terrorists or terroristic organizations and regimes all across the world, and that government is not committing human rights violations. As I'm listing this criteria, and you're thinking about the ANC, you're seeing
Yeah.
they're not passing the test.
I
But
think there's
even
like, I don't even think they hit one mark. Like,
but
they don't even get
all
one out
of
of
that
10.
being said, even that being true, that the South African government is horribly failing in meeting this criteria, Solidarity Movement and AfriForum's message to the Trump administration was still that they should not kick South Africa out of AGOA, because that would be punishing the normal citizens in South Africa rather than the politicians that are pushing these radical policies. That's the other thing. AfriForum and the Solidarity Movement never demanded sanctions on South Africa. We have for years been demanding laser focused sanctions on those politicians that are pushing these destructive policies, that are inciting violence, that are putting South Africa on this destructive path. And this is where the reality of things come in. AfriForum can make all of these arguments. We can present all of these arguments to the Trump administration. But at the end of the day, whatever the United States and the Trump administration specifically decides to do is going to be left to their judgment and discretion. That's AfriForum has no control, and the Solidarity Movement have no control over that. No matter how many journalists and analysts claim that we have Trump on strings, he's our puppet. No, we can only give him the facts. We can give him our stance. We can back up our arguments. But at the end of the day, that's going to be up to Trump and his administration. What they're going to do is going to be their decision. So that's just scratching that's the tip of the iceberg, the ears of the hippopotamus of our Washington memorandum. But it's some of the just most blatant lies, I think, that are out there to dispel. Is the fact that AfriForum's stance is that don't punish South Africa, punish the corrupt politicians that are pushing South Africa towards the edge.
Yeah, and you touched on it. You touched on something there as well. Like when the ANC just blamed you guys for everything, blamed you for oh, the reason why we don't have any funding now is because AfriForum, look at what they did,
Mm.
they just love to blame the white man, and that was just hilarious. And again, nobody really fell for it, other than the radical lefties.
I think most
Um,
people are smart enough to know that when it comes to the Trump administration's decisions, as I said earlier, they make their own decisions at the end of the day. Trump is not
yeah,
AfriForum's puppet. We're not whispering into his ear. We have provided his administration with, as I said, relevant information, made our case. But what they do with that information, how they decide to act, at the end of the day, that's going to be Trump's and his team's call.
yeah. Um, I think let's keep this interview as short as possible, because I would really want people to jump on and watch this, and then quickly go to the documentary,
All right.
which is once again linked in the description below, ladies and gentlemen. So if you
Mm.
haven't watched the documentary yet, please do.
Maybe
Um,
reassurance for your audience, if you can't get to all the audience questions, I will be doing a Q&A tonight on my YouTube channel to specifically dedicated to answering people's questions. So I think that for those questions that we don't get to, that stream on my channel, my Conscious Carical channel, is
yeah,
specifically
we can do that. I'm gonna be honest, I haven't really been a lot of questions coming in,
that's no problem.
um, but anyway, regardless, if there are some questions I may have missed, you guys can go and join Ernst on his stream tonight and ask the questions. There is one more question that I
Sure.
think we do need to address before we go.
Mm.
Ernst, I'd
Why did the
really
tone get so serious now?
wait, wait for it. I need you to just be honest. Just for this one time. I mean, you're always honest, but I need you to be extra honest. Like, just keep you've been on this hill, this ride, this wagon of honesty. So let's keep it going. Come on, man. We know that AfriForum has many times mentioned white genocide in South Africa. Come on. Come on.
Yeah, it's one of those propaganda points against AfriForum that just keeps coming up. But I understand why, because it's much easier to argue against the fictional version of AfriForum than the real thing, because the real arguments that AfriForum are making regarding farm murders are actually nuanced and complex and
Yep.
difficult to disprove, while just saying, well, AfriForum calls farm murders a white genocide, that's an easy slam dunk if you're a fact checker in very thick quotation marks. So no, the long and short of it, no, AfriForum does not call farm murders a white genocide. But at the same time, does farm murders really have to escalate to the level of a genocide for people to start caring about this issue? That's the real question. That seems to be the answer that we get, is that it's not a genocide, therefore we don't care. That's genuinely the answer that I seem to be getting. It's a messed up answer. It's a messed up sentiment. But at the same time,
100%.
that's the logic. And I mean, AfriForum's stance is very clear. Farm murders are a genuinely, well, firstly, real issue, and secondly, a unique issue that requires a unique counter strategy. That's why our main remedy is that the government needs to declare farm murders a priority crime, as outlined by the Police Act. Now, there's a lot of confusion. People hear priority crime and they think, oh, you want farm murders to be the priority. No, priority crimes are a specific classification of crimes, unique crimes that deserve a unique counter strategy. They get their own investigative units, and they get specific specialized investigation and mitigation strategies. Some examples of priority crimes that have been declared priority crimes are gender-based violence, rhino poaching, cash in transit heists, political killings, gang violence. All of these are priority crimes because they all have a unique nature and deserve a unique counter strategy. But for some reason, the South African government just outright refuses to declare farm murders a priority crime, even though it meets all of the criteria for one. Then also, I mean, here the record is very, very easy to verify. Ernst Roots, when he was at AfriForum, wrote a book called Kill the Boer on farm murders in 2018. That's 7 years ago. That's during the first Trump administration. In that book, he dedicates an entire chapter. An entire chapter. You could write anything he wants in that book. He dedicates an entire chapter within the book to dispelling death. There we go. That's the book. Fantastic read. Go read it. It is on Amazon. And Adams chooses to dedicate an entire chapter within that book to explaining why farm murders, our stance is not that farm murders are a genocide. And for some reason, people just memory hold that that's an inconvenient fact. I was on a panel discussion the other day on Podcast Party, the platform, and one of the people on the panel, a ex-US diplomat, looked me in the eye and just blatantly lied. He's like, Adams Roots in 2018 claimed that farm murders are a white genocide on Tucker Carlson. I'm like, the Ernst Roots that in 2018, that very same year, wrote a book with a chapter dedicated to why that is not the case. That Ernst Roots, and that those are the type of just blatant lies we encounter. But as I said, it is a serious issue. It is a very serious issue, and AfriForum treats it as such. I mean, we're one of the premier organizations fighting back against the scourge. But at the same time, if you dare to be an activist against the issue of farm murders, if you dare to try and bring attention to this issue, then you're smeared and lied about, mocked. It really is one of that. Also, is something that makes farm murders a quite a unique violent crime phenomenon. It is the only violent crime phenomenon that is, firstly, those that are victims of it are often slandered and smeared as liars. It is also the only violent crime phenomenon where activists trying to bring attention to that crime phenomenon are attacked and lied about and just smeared and their characters assassinated. It is also the only violent crime phenomenon that is openly encouraged by high-profile politicians through chants like "kill the boer, kill the farmer." It is the only violent crime phenomenon that is openly denied by the president of South Africa. President Ramaphosa in 2018 went to New York to spread disinformation, ironically, where he claimed on an international stage that, and I quote, there are no murdering of farmers and white farmers in South Africa. You can find that quote online. It's there, verbatim, what he said. What did the South African media? Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, or you can watch that clip in the documentary.
Exactly. So what did the South African media do when he just told that blatant lie, such an easy fact check? Oh no, they didn't fact check it. They just wrote opinion pieces called "What the President Meant to Say," covering doing damage control. That's exactly what we were talking about earlier in this conversation. So that's also one of the unique aspects of farm murders as a violent crime phenomenon is how those who try to bring attention to it are treated. I've never seen an activist trying to bring attention to, for example, gender-based violence, a real violent crime, a serious violent crime phenomenon in South Africa. I've never seen an activist for that type to bring attention to that cause being shouted down in an interview saying, "Do you know that the majority of murder victims in South Africa are men? How dare you put the focus on women?" I've never seen that happen. But if that happens with farm murder activists that try to bring attention to farm murders, the knee-jerk reaction is always to cite the murder rate in South Africa. Like, the majority of people murdered aren't farmers. Farm murders are just a small percentage. Do you tell that to those against rhino poaching as well? Out of the total of animals killed in a year, very small percentage are rhinos. Therefore, rhino poaching is an illegitimate cause to anti-rhino poaching is an illegitimate cause? No, because that would be
But what's
ridiculous.
what's also, sorry to interrupt, but what's also
No, go
interesting
for it. I'm
about
done.
what you say is that when those people quote or try and like, oh, but there's only like one out of whatever amount of people
Yeah.
that die. The problem is those statistics that they are basically regurgitating or can be incorrect because, as AfriForum has proved recently, the police minister said that there was only, what was it, one murder in
No,
a
one
specific,
murder in 3 months, and then
and you guys
and he
debunked
said,
that.
I dare someone, or I challenge people to give me alternative, the real facts." And AfriForum's like, "Well, here you go. We've documented them all for you here in a very neat package."
And there was
Um,
eight, I think you
yeah,
guys said. Yeah.
yeah,
So
if I remember correctly, yeah.
when even when people try and rebut that claim, that might be incorrect. So
Mm.
yeah, it's a very interesting phenomenon. And It's scary actually that we live in a country like that. But yes, Ernst van Zyl, there was one question, so
Sure, go for it.
let me bring it up here. Johan, I think, yeah, Juan van Eden says, "When
Hmm.
are the number of farmers and their families murdered? Sorry, what are the number of farmers and their families murdered since 1994 up till now? I get conflicting amount on Google between 3 to 5,000."
Hmm. My colleague Jacques Broederijk will have the exact number. He's the farm murder expert at
Hmm.
AfriForum. If I remember correctly, I'm talking under correction. I think it's in the region of 3,000, but I'll have to go check. Johan is welcome to send me an email or even send an email to my colleague Jacques Broederijk with that question, and we'll get back to him with the numbers. But if I remember correctly, it is in that ballpark of about 3,000. Yes.
3,000 too many, to be honest. I hate to
That's the other
end.
thing. You swap out farmer with any other profession, it starts becoming very disturbing. Like, what about like thousands of journalists? What if it was like thousands
Teachers.
of teachers, thousands of politicians, thousands of podcast hosts? Then the numbers get very disturbing. Then you're like, whoa, that's actually like insane. But for some reason, because it's farmers, people are just like, eh. I mean, it's a violent country. Why is that? Like, why, if you swap out the profession of anything else, then you realize how serious this is. But as soon as it's farming is the profession, then they're like, nah, it's normal crime. That's another question to ponder.
It is indeed. Johan van Eden says, "Thank you.
Hmm.
You're welcome, Johan."
My
Um,
also, if you're struggling with my email address, it's well, firstly, it's my name, Ernst dot one word van Zyl at afriforum.co.za. But you can also find it on my YouTube channel if you just go to the Conscious Caracal. I think it's the About tab. You'll see the email address and it's right there, open to everyone. Send me your questions, I'll answer all of them.
Voot is asking how many attacks, though, and again, I
Tax,
think,
that's much more difficult. I have
yeah,
no idea. I'll have to check. Again, send me that question in an email and I'll be able to forward it to Jacques Broederijk, my colleague. He'll be able to tell you.
yeah. I hate to end on such a,
A morbid note.
yeah.
Well, I can end off just with a thought.
Go ahead,
I
please.
think a very a rule of thumb that has stood out the past 2 months that just works perfectly, and it's not just applicable to AfriForum. If you want to know what the stance is of an organization or an individual, and you read or hear about, did you hear people say this, or this person said this, or did this? The rule of thumb is always ask the question, am I hearing this firsthand from AfriForum? Like, did AfriForum really say this? Or am I hearing this as an interpretation or paraphrasing from or through the lens of someone else? There's been so many claims the past 2 months of AfriForum says this or AfriForum does this. And it's always from people with second-hand information, third-hand information, or people giving their own interpretation of what was said. So just and like I said, this is not just applicable to AfriForum. Apply that rule of thumb. If you hear, did you hear what Joe Emilio said? And like, did you hear it from him directly, or did you see some just random person post on Twitter something that's not even a direct, doesn't even have a source? It's just their claim that this is something Joe said. So whenever it's about claims and stances of organizations and individuals, if something doesn't seem right, something seems off, always just go to the direct source. See if you can find the direct where that quote comes from, and that'll be that serves me very well to get to the truth. And lastly, which is applicable to my documentary as well, don't just believe what I or AfriForum says. Research what we say. We've got all the receipts, as you said earlier, Joe. We've got all the source. That's why the sources are there. Go check it for yourself, and hopefully you'll realize that AfriForum is on the money every single time. When we're not, we will openly state that we got the facts wrong, but that hasn't happened yet.
100% correct. Yeah, sorry, there was an interesting question
Sure.
that came in. Um, I, I don't know. Okay, so I'm gonna read the question. Is Julius Malema going to be in court again after his outburst on the 21st of April? Now, I don't
It
know what.
probably means 21st of March, seeing of Kill the Boer.
Yes. But if I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, you
Hmm.
guys are currently have court cases against him, correct?
Hmm. That Kildare court case is still going on, or that saga is still going on. It is currently at the Constitutional Court, and we are waiting for feedback from the Constitutional Court whether they will be looking at the case. We will keep the public up to date on what they tell us, but yeah, that's it's. No other case really makes sense until that is resolved in the constitutional courts, and we're still very much in the fight there.
Okay, great. And the gun case, that wasn't you guys.
That one, no, that is us. The shooting of a firearm in public. That case, somewhere this year there should be a verdict, but that's also my colleague Jacques Broederijk who handles that case. But if I remember correctly, there should be a verdict somewhere this year. So keep an eye out on AfriForum's website and on our social media for that.
And just to answer that
Mm,
question that popped up, they did correct themselves and say March.
mm,
Um, if I understand it, because the verdict has
mm,
gone to the Constitutional Court,
mm,
it means that it's not in effect. If I'm,
mm.
so
Well, in regards to the Constitutional Court, how I understand it, the Supreme Court of Appeals verdict is currently in effect. So
okay,
that as it applies to Kill the Boer, that's what's currently happening. So we're going to have to wait for that Constitutional Court case to see if we get a different verdict there.
yeah,
But as I understand the process, the Supreme Court of Appeal case or verdict currently stands.
okay, which
But
is
I,
that,
but I'm open to be proven wrong or to be corrected. Maybe
yeah,
I'm not understanding the process correctly, but that's how I understand it.
okay. And to remind everybody, the verdict there was that it's not hate speech.
Mm,
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in on this afternoon, very special edition of the NewsFlash podcast. Ernst van Zyl, thank you so much for being on the show. It's great chatting to you as always, and I'll definitely, as you know, you're always welcome back on the show anytime. And yeah, I'm sure I'll chat to you soon.
mm. Well, as soon as you have a big project that you want to promote and talk about, I heard a birdie tell me that there might be one in the future. Then you can let me know, and we can chat about it on Conscious Caracal as well. But I do recommend or hope that people go watch the documentary. It's called "Is Trump Right About South Africa?" It's on the AfriForum YouTube channel. Go look at the facts presented, and you decide for yourself. Think about that question, and you be the judge.
100%. Cheers, Ernst. Thanks again.
Cheers, guys. Have a good one.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Ernst van Zyl from AfriForum joining me on the show to chat about the documentary Is Trump Right About South Africa? It is linked in the description below, so please go check it out if you haven't yet. And then you be the judge. Was Trump right about South Africa? Spoiler alert, yes, he was. And I think none of us will be surprised about that. Anyways, for those of you that tuned in, thank you so much. For those of you that were commenting and having conversation in the live chat, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of NewsFlash. And look out for an upcoming stream next week, ladies and gentlemen. Very special guest going to be on the show. With all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys soon. Stay safe out there. Cheers.